Hello everybody, this is Dr. Holcomb again. In this video, I want to go over the modes of proof, or sometimes called the modes of persuasion, again. And more specifically, what I want to do is reinforce information that from the previous YouTube video, the Galloway video. And I like that video. It has a lot of good information on there, so I want to use this opportunity to underline some of its key points. But it only focuses on visual text. So since your first paper is going to be an analysis of a print text, I thought we'd go back to it and offer some examples in written form. So let's get started. The first thing I want to review is Aristotle's statement on the three modes of proof and or persuasion. This is from the 4th century BCE, and we are still quoting it today, and it drives a lot of the textbook market in for a first-year composition. So Aristotle says, of the modes of persuasion furnished by the spoken, and I added, or written word, there are three kinds. The first kind depends on the personal character of the speaker. We know that as ethos. The second, on putting the audience into a certain frame of mind, or pathos. The third, on the proof or apparent proof provided by the words of the speech itself. Now, the one little kind of potentially confusing part is, what does he mean by apparent proof? I think this can be interpreted in two ways. In one sense, could be referring to the idea that rhetoric primarily deals with probabilities, that for many of the issues that we have to debate, either in the academy or in the public sphere, we don't have certain knowledge. The best we have are probabilities. Take, for instance, some sort of legislative policy. Somebody says, lowering taxes will reduce the debt, or increasing taxes will reduce the debt. Well, we don't know for certain if that chain of event will occur, but we can make a plausible or probable case that it will. Or inversely, we could say lowering taxes will expand the economy. Again, we don't have certain knowledge that A will lead to B, but we can make a probable case that such will happen. Okay, let's look at ethos. In here, this is material that we've seen before. Persuasion is achieved by the speaker or writer's personal character when the speech is spoken as to make him or her credible. This was quoted in the previous video. What he didn't quote was this next little snippet, which kind of gives an example. We believe good men and women more fully and more readily than others. Here Aristotle is just talking about how we respond to people and the normal course of events. That's part of his insight with ethos. The video also mentions some terms, ways of talking about ethos. Terms like credibility, respectability, likability, reputation, and message quality. That is, how well is the thing put together? Are there grammatical errors, or is it free from error? Is it stylistically clear, pleasing? All these things build an impression of the writer. Now, I'm going over these again because when you do your essay 1, which is a rhetorical analysis, these are terms that you can use to leverage an interpretation of whatever text you're analyzing. And I haven't decided yet. I might make an artificial rule with essay 1 to say even though you can talk about ethos, pathos, and logos, you can't use those terms. Rather, you have to use a more specific vocabulary, which makes it clear what you're talking about, but you just can't sort of do a kind of cookie cutter analysis. That's what I'm trying to avoid. This is ethos, this is pathos, this is logos. By using more specific terms, I'm trying to encourage you to be more specific and detailed in your analysis. Galloway also offers this question, a good kind of question to keep in mind when you're thinking about ethos. Does the author have credibility or authority? I would add a second and crucial question, what textual evidence can you find to support your answer? So if you say, yeah, he has credibility or she has authority, in the essay one, the next move that you're going to need to make is to quote locations in the text to support that interpretation. Okay, let's look at an example of ethos in a printed text. This comes from an essay, it's in our reader, it's by Joel Salatin, called Declare Your Independence. It's about declaring our independence from industrial produced foods. And this is, I don't know, about a third of the way through the essay. And as we go, I'm going to talk about the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic ethos. Here, Joel Salatin says, on our polyface farm, nestled in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, we have consciously opted out of the industrial production and marketing paradigms. Meat chickens move every day in floorless, portable shelters across the pasture, enjoying bugs, forage, and local grain. Tyson-style, inhumane fecal factory chicken houses have no place here. I would call this intrinsic ethos. He is explicitly invoking his identity as a farmer, or his family's identity here. I mean, it's encoded in the text when he says we. I think what he's saying is that I'm not only talking the talk, I'm walking the walk. That I'm not only asking you to do things, I'm doing them myself. Okay, extrinsic ethos would be the reputation of the writer or speaker prior to or outside of the speech. So if you're at all familiar with the alternative food movement, you probably know who Joel Salatin is. He's written extensively on the topic. He's traveled around the country delivering speeches and talks. He's been interviewed on news shows and other kind of farming shows. So he does have an extrinsic ethos. He has a reputation that exists independent of this particular essay. But here he's invoking that ethos and using it as a resource of persuasion. And he's doing it pretty directly in the first paragraph. In the second paragraph, I think ethos is still at work here, but in a much more indirect fashion. Let me read that second paragraph. The magical land healing processes we use, with cattle using mob stocking, herbivores solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration fertilization, runs opposite the grain-based feedlot system practiced by mainline industrial cattle production. Okay, there's a lot of technical terms here. And you could make the case that there's an indirect ethos operating here because somebody who can wield these terms must be an authority on these terms. There's also a little ambiguity. You might even make the case that his attempt at ethos is somewhat undercut by his broader argument. He's asking us to free ourselves from corporate and industrially produced food, yet he's kind of using this technical jargon of the corporation, of the technical industries. Okay, let's move on. Pathos. Again, you've seen some of this before. Let's look at the second sentence. This is new. Aristotle, when he's talking about pathos, he says, our judgments when we are pleased and friendly are not the same as when we are pained and hostile. Here he's acknowledging the fact, or the typical occurrence, that our emotional state affects how we make decisions. Galloway gives us some more specific terms and to talk about pathos, using emotionally charged language, generating sympathy. This is often done through little short narrative passages. When you encounter a narrative, even in an argumentative piece of writing, you're probably in the realm of pathos. Pathos can also be found when the writer is conjuring one's imagination or using sensory details. Classical rhetoricians called this vivacity, or setting the scene before the reader's eye. We're going to see an example in a second. A question to ask yourself, does the message connect with the audience emotionally? And once again, what textual evidence can you find to support your answer? That's a crucial move in any analysis. So here are several examples. One is from the speech that we've already read from President Obama on the killing of bin Laden. It appears near the beginning of the speech. He says, "The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through a cloudless September sky, the Twin Towers collapsing to the ground, black smoke billowing up from the Pentagon." This is fairly clearly an appeal through pathos. The detail, I mean, he's painting a scene that we can visualize. I can see it. I can remember watching it on the television, and this captures that experience well. And he's also trying to kind of recreate the pain, the horror, and the anger that we all felt at that moment. And that's, again, that he's using that as a rhetorical resource. The second one is from the commencement speech that you read, or that you should have read this week, by George Saunders. He's talking about a moment in which he regretted his behavior. It was 7th grade. A new girl who had kind of goofy looking glasses showed up in class, and she was ostracized. So here's how he talks about that scene. "So she came to our school and our neighborhood and was mostly ignored, occasionally teased. I could see this hurt her. I still remember the way she'd look after such an insult. Eyes cast down, a little gut kick, as if having just been reminded of her place in things. She was trying as much as possible to disappear. After a while she drifted away, hair strands still in her mouth." Here, this little narrative vignette is trying to generate sympathy for the girl. And he's sort of tugging on our heartstrings with it. There's also ethos kind of coming in through the back door, because you're also reminded of that he's the kind of personality, or who would be able to note this pain, observe this pain, and register it. And finally, I give another example which pathos is working very, very subtly and nuanced way, just the level of word choice. These, at the bottom of this screen, our slide, are 3 different ways of saying roughly the same thing. The first is, the president refined his position on the issue. In the second version, Obama flip-flopped on the issue. And in the third one, the president pivoted his stance on the issue. Note here how the different choice in words suggest different kinds of connotations and different emotional or attitudinal stances toward the event that these sentences depict. In the first one, it sounds like he, through this intellectual cogitation, he has decided to come up with a much more sophisticated take on an issue. And the second one, it's not the president, it's Obama. So the notion of his office, his title, is stripped out. And flip-flop has a sort of a negative connotation to the expression. And in the next one, it seems kind of cool and calculating. He pivoted. Okay. Let's move on to logos. And again, we've seen a lot of this language. In the middle paragraph, we see some phrases that we could use in our own analysis to leverage our interpretations. A particular thing, does or does not make clear statements, does or does not support those statements with logical reasons, facts, and evidence. And a question to keep in mind, is the message based on facts, evidence, or logic? And again, what textual evidence can you find to support your answer? Again, when you're doing your analysis, I would expect that you quote some text to illustrate your claims. And here's an example from another reading this week. This is The Path Forward about student loan debt and its ill effects. Let's read this. The effects of student debt can be felt all over the country. According to data from 2011, 2/3 of students who earn four-year bachelor's degrees are graduating with an average student loan debt or more than $25,000, and 1 in 10 borrowers now owe more than $54,000 in loans. Here, the first sentence makes a claim, and the second sentence backs up that claim with statistics. This is Logos in action in print. Okay, I'm out of time. Ciao.